Well, hello there. This is Tim Daniels from THS Sporting Center, and take two being actually the second Muzzy bow. I already opened up the box on this to get past the staples and everything on it. This is the post-recall bow. The first ones that they entered shipping out were all recalled, and I sent them all back to Muzzy per their request. And it is now May 6th. I just received this the other day after having going through another venue in order to receive one of these. Muzzy has refused to send me one of these after that last video I did. And I didn't really trash the bow or anything like that. I don't believe so. I was just very honest about what I saw and what I thought about it. And I tried to be rather complimentary under the circumstances. But nonetheless, I do have one of these in my hands now, and what we're going to do is set it up like we did last time and give it a run first before maybe we start making a few adjustments on it. One thing is one thing that many people are saying is as I said in the previous video, it was my idea that the strings and cables are too short, and sure as can be, that's what we look like we see here, and that's what's been happening. So from the original bow, they just apparently changed the power limb, and looks like they probably have done nothing else. Now I've heard that there's some inline changes coming, but again, that's all hearsay, because again, Muzzy or Faradyne, however you want to slice it, has again been on some kind of whatever type of well, I don't know, they choose to take a perspective on this which has seemed to be less than productive. They intentionally released another bow, or put a bow back out after going through all the troubles of recalling it, that are still going to be some of the same problems that they did before. One of the other problems they had in the first place, there is no lube on these bolts right here. Again, that was a big mistake on their end, and it's still a problem here, because even after having them back, they did nothing to put lube on them. That is a simple fix. Also too, this is beautiful here. This is something that they just opened up the box, and this is the way they sent it to me. New bow from them. This one here too. This one here is the worst one. You know, this one over here really is not as bad. But that has already been stripped out fairly well. So, again, that is something that will probably have to end up being replaced. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and just put the rest on this bow now. Whenever installing a rest or something like that, I like to use a tiny bit of Loctite glue. I prefer the gel material. It doesn't run, and it doesn't run off to any spot that you don't want it to be in the first place. They were nice enough to put a little rubber protector, a little rubber tip protector over this sharp bow fishing point, which is probably a nice thing. It would have rode through a package. It was nice that they somebody thought of that ahead of time. Their offset on the rest is really, really close. It might have to come inboard just a sliver, but where they have it is nice. Can you pull around to the side here? And what I'm going to do here is the old trick that I used to use is just a plain old business card to establish where 90 is on this bow. And then what I would do is bring it up a little bit. Something like this. Again, a little bit knock high. Once I generally know where the knock location is going to be, I do a hand-served tied knock, then a D-loop. I keep the D-loop really short, tie it nice and tight. This has worked out better in my personal experience than any brass knocks ever have. Like I said, I really tie those sort of small because they don't need to be that big. You don't really hook a big old huge honker dog release aid often to it. You can use a release aid on some of these, and they'll still, you can tie it with enough space to use them, but it again is what it is. Will it fly better with release aid? Absolutely. You know, at this point, you could put some finger savers on it. I could consider doing that. Quite honestly, I plan on taking this out tonight and shooting it. My guess is that I'm not going to do a whole lot of shooting of it because I don't think the performance is going to be there. I think it's going to be something that is going to be not terribly efficient, at least not as efficient as it can be. So I'm not going to put a lot of time and effort in putting slick fingers onto something like this, which is going to be just taken apart after tomorrow. So again, this has just been right out of the box. We have made no other adjustments to it. The only thing we've done is put on a rest. I'm going to go over here, put it on the scale. It is set on the long setting right now on both. Draw stops are out at about equal lengths. That part looks good. Let's see what we got. 40 pounds. Replacing the strings and cables on this, and it's, tell you right now, without, I haven't even done it yet, it's not some kind of engineering marvel here, okay? You don't have to be some kind of rocket scientist to figure out that these are too short, and what you need is something longer. It's again, a no frickin' brainer. But again, how long? Right. 99 feet per second.
Hey, Garrett. He said he'll be back in about a half hour.
It's not bad. $104. Again, that's not bad at all. The one thing I did notice is that the previous one had way more drag on this cable slide. The ones that I had received, there was such horrible cable chatter. It was just dragging on the slide, something vicious. And you could hear the slide like popping as it went. This does not seem to be doing that at all. I know the number of the bows that I sent back personally did have improved slides on them. We just didn't take them off before we sent them back to them. So. This is obviously a bow that's been out in the public before and was recalled and then brought back in because of the pry marks on the limb bolts. So we had two at 99 feet per second and one at 104. One of the other things I want to cover here is that turning up these limb bolts that are dry. Can make all sorts of fun jokes about that, but nonetheless. Here again, look how the Allen wrench is sort of sloppy fit in this already because whoever used this thing before they sent it back out, beat this up pretty good. Now, you watch the amount of detent on this Allen key here, okay? That's a fair amount of force, and that's barely moving. Okay. That's a bit aggressive. And again, this is just due to somebody's lack of due diligence in doing the job right and putting lube in here. I'm not going to even screw around with keep on trying to force this down. It's pointless to exert such energy in this. The bottom line is it's done wrong. So what I'm going to do is I actually took it about a flat and a half, and I'm just going to take it about a flat and a half back to where it was so I can keep everything the way it was and shoot it tonight the way it came out of the box. Again, though, that is just due to either being cheap or poor quality control. So the brace height is 9 1/8 inches to the center. That is ridiculous. Or at least it seems to be a bit aggressive for my experience, from my experience. So 9 1/8 inches a bit high. And again, you're losing out on a ton of power stroke. The tip to tip on this bow right now is 40 3/8 of an inch. So 40 3/8 of an inch from tip to tip on this limb. I think that's actually slightly more than the last one, and I don't remember if I wrote that down or not. At this point too, again, maybe I'll just measure for giggles the span right here. Between this spot and this spot, we have 26 3/4 of an inch. By the way, we have several little dings in these things as well. I don't know if that's just from machining or whatnot, but nothing that's gonna so far be really effective, but there is a number of either bad finishing work. So what was that, 26 3/4 inch? And let's see what this one says, just in case. We're gonna go to 25 7/8. 25 7/8, 40 pounds, 9 1/4 inch brace height, and 40 1/4 overall, something like that. All right, it is May 8th. This is the day after that I opened it up out of the box. I took it out, or 2 days later. I shot it on the 5th. I took it out at night, and it did about what I expected. It was actually slightly better than the original one, but I tried to tighten this one down, and I realized immediately that there were some problems with it. And so what I did here is I took it apart completely, and I wanted to show you what I ran across. These are the limb pockets. May be hard to see, but the riser is catching to the inside of these here. And what that's doing in turn is crushing the inside portion. You hold that there for a second? Yeah. It's crushing the inside part of this riser here as this guide. So you can see that's mushroomed through there completely. That will now not seat in the limb pocket anywhere where it's supposed to. I'm gonna flip the bow over. Can you hold it just like that for a second? Same thing on the flip side. Again, it will not seat down all the way. One of the limbs was able to turn down, or the limb pocket was able to turn down all the way. The other one was not able to turn down all the way. Other things that I ran across is like stuff like this right here on the side of the riser, where either the limb pocket or some other material was just getting in the way of this closing down all the way. Same thing up here, not as bad. Matter of fact, yes, it was the top one that could turn down all the way. This bottom one could not turn down all the way. Again, the limb pockets, the way they sit in there, and that's what's rubbing or crushing those other pieces in. I want to show you on the limb bolts. I had put a little bit of white lithium grease on them or put a lot of white lithium grease on them to try to get them to move freely or a lot easier. This is the inside of the limb bolt receiver and how that metal is all stripped off because there was no lube in there. Same thing on the other one. Also, one of the other things that we noticed, one of the other guys noticed, is that if you can get the light just right, you'll see there's a line on these power limbs. And that is because the outboard limb is coming down and contacting it when you're cycling this bow. And that is a considerable line there. Again, I don't know if you can quite catch it in the reflection, but I'll move it back and forth slowly. There's a line that runs all the way across, and that is from this block here coming in contact with that. Interesting. Okay, upon fixing the limb pocket, or the riser itself, I started to try to correct the limb pocket, and that was a little harder to do. So I went and seated the limb pocket back to the riser, and I could get them to seat, but I noticed on the bottom limb there was an additional problem.
We're just doing one container per person right now.
And as it rotates back, it actually walks out. And what I can do is show you the wear marks right here and here. And that is from here and here. And as the access point rotates off of this radius right here, it's causing it to pivot off that and actually pull the limb pocket off. So it's like this. Here, John, can I get you to hold that again? Just like that. So as it's like this, what's happening as it comes back, it's actually walking off, which lifts the limb cup or limb pocket back off the top there. See how it's climbing like that? So as you go there, again, that space might not be hard to articulate in the camera, but that's what's happening there. There you go. All right. This is the first incantation of recabling this bow and putting different strings on it. What I ended up doing was using a hard plastic yoke, and it didn't work out quite as well as I want. What happens is it doesn't load quite properly and distribute the weight as well as I would hope it would. On most bows, it wouldn't be as much of an issue, but because of the narrowness of the axle-to-axle or portions that these are actually anchored to, and how much pretension is on it, it just doesn't work out quite as well. Does it work? Yes. Right now, I have it set at 29 inches and 40 pounds. And I also put a windstalker on there. Now, these are an old cable guard system that's out of business. In the next video that you're going to see, or coming up later in this, I'm going to be planning on doing a roller cable guard system. And the roller cable guard system will basically achieve some of the same things by keeping the cables pushed back and away from your wrist, thus giving you a little bit more space. It was my hope that this particular system would actually keep the cables a little bit more spread out and trying to keep the torque down to the least. And I really do have it down to the minimum, where the cable is actually just barely touching the side of the shaft. In a finished product, I would not have it touch the shaft at all. Again, this is a little tricky. This wasn't ever designed for something this short. So let's go over here. All right, it's 112. So it's already like 12 feet per second faster than the last one. 116. Also, too, it's really quiet this way, too. I don't know if you can tell that on the camera, but it's quieter than it was before. 113. One of the things that, if you're playing around with these, the things to keep in mind is the space in between this little, the power limb and the outboard limb. You want to make sure that you still have some good space there. You don't want to have it collapsing down and fully hitting it. The other thing too is if you're also decide to play around with one of these, be careful. You don't want to go to 100% let off. Okay, so what we ran across here a minute ago is that we were tightening down the bow, and after cleaning up the inside of the limb pocket and knowing what we've ran across in the past with this limb pocket and how it's lined up, or by the specific design, how it was eating at that aluminum. Well, the same thing is happening here, is as when you go to tighten it down, it was actually hitting. Hey, Fred, can I get you to hold that? Mm-hmm. Here, tilt it like that. Yeah. So what it's doing is hitting down at this point right here. So when you go to tighten it down, it's just absolutely stopping. It's because the lack of guidance that's back here that is causing that right there. So what we're going to do is move the limb pocket back that way some so it can fully collapse. Lately I've been really busy and haven't had the time to spend on screwing around with this bow to find the best configuration for it. I've been spending a lot of time out on the water bow fishing, and that's why I love this sport. Bottom line is, though, I will have a better cable system and string, most likely, coming up in a video in the next month or so. And it'll be something easier replicated, and I'll provide that information to you.